Hi, I'm Matthias. I'm a psychotherapist, and I specialize in working with trauma.
Hi, I'm Joey. I'm an author and a poet.
This is a podcast where we dive deep into complicated questions.
And share our personal experiences.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll gain some insight.
Or maybe just leave with more questions.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we're two dudes who probably just need some more therapy. Do you believe in God?
Whoa. I never had a crazy connection. Are we actually talking about that?
We can. Are you religious? Why? Why not?
I'm baptized. My mom brought me to get dunked in the water, and like that was cool and all. I guess
Wait, baptized into what church? Like Catholic or what?
I'm Catholic. Yeah, and I went to a Catholic high school and elementary school. Mm-hmm. And I guess to be honest with you, I don't feel like I was really educated in it. I was just kind of thrown into it.
They didn't do a good job at that school, I guess. You didn't have like classes about religion at a Catholic school?
I did. I had religion class. We had prayer. We had all of that. But it was almost like it was getting in the way. It was just like, oh, we got to do this. Like school's making me do this. So like, screw it. I hate it now. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like, totally. I wanted to be rebellious about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that people have beliefs and stuff, and I think that's amazing. But I just, in my life, I've never really been shown how it can help me versus me still try to solve my own problem in that way.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you have any spiritual beliefs? You thinking about any of that?
No, I find my mind doesn't really go there. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of very internal where this is probably something I got to work on, but I try to solve that myself. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I kind of break it down there.
So what do you think happens after we die? Just go black? What do you think?
I don't care. I'm here to be here. And it took a while for me to try to be okay with that. But I also don't really want to think about it, I guess. There's also that. How about you?
Well, what would be the weirdest thing to happen after we die?
That's a great question. I think there's two sides of it. Okay, so it could be the darker side and the brighter side. Okay. The brighter side, you could be coming back as a mosquito.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That would suck.
I don't know.
But
that'd be weird.
Get it? That would suck. Oh, man. I'm so glad I got that. Wow, we could be done. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. Woo! That would suck. I don't know if I'm going to do better than that this whole episode.
Congratulations. You have 2 kids, but now you are a father. That's the line.
I'm so proud. Oh, man. There is a God.
That's amazing.
Being
a mosquito would suck.
Oh, yeah. The reincarnation thing, being a mosquito. That would probably mean you did real bad this side of things. You did not get enough TikTok followers to upgrade from mosquito. I'm sorry. Or
there's the darker side where it could be nothing. It could be going to a bad place.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
I feel like those two things would be kind of like bad on either spectrum, let's say.
Okay, so that's the worst case scenario is either being a bug or going to some sort of bad place.
I hate bugs, man.
What would be the good option?
I almost want to say getting a second chance or coming back as a dog.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. A dog, but in modern America, not like in the Mongolian desert, right?
I don't know. I haven't done it yet.
I mean, or you have.
Or I have.
You were a very good Mongolian dog, and that's why you got to come back as a TikToker this time around.
I made it. My mom's gonna be so proud as she hears this.
I don't know. I like the idea. This isn't what I believe is the truth. I have beliefs around what I think all this is, what all that is. But if I'm just having fun, I think it'd be fun to get to go back and do it a second time. But I don't know then what I want to know, what I know now, or just go live through it again. Or would I want to play a different character? Would I want to like go through, but this time I don't know, my son, or I'm going to go through it this time. I'm going to be Elvis, or this time I'm going to be Justin Bieber, or something. Like if you could just like pick your character like in a video game, and play the story mode, but through a different lens, kind of like in
It's
Harry
crazy
Potter.
though, because you look. What house are you in Harry Potter?
Oh, Gryffindor. I mean, sorry, that's my vibe.
Hufflepuff.
You were Hufflepuff. I thought you'd do a Slytherin move.
No, my girlfriend Angelica's, she's Slytherin.
Yeah.
Her entire life she thought she was Hufflepuff, and then I was like, take the test again.
Oh, dude.
She cried.
I mean, we're talking about metaphysical worlds. I would love if Harry Potter was like real. That'd be so fun. Freaking go to Hogwarts and learn magic. Man, whatever religion that is, that sounds like a blast.
Quidditch is a sport.
But you can't fly around. What's the point? Just hop around, run
What's
around.
The point?
Like looking.
You're not wrong.
No offense to anyone who plays Quidditch, but it seems a little silly running around with room between your legs.
A little bit. Okay, so what are your beliefs?
Oh, okay. So what I actually think, I don't think we come back as Harry Potter, and I don't think we come back like a video game. Although we could get deep into simulation theory, and that does scare me enough. It scares me enough. Yeah, I'm Christian. Yeah. So I'm straight up. Yeah, Protestant.
I'm
so
straight up.
Straight up. Just like,
what do you believe in? I'm straight up.
dude, straight up Christian. Yeah, evangelical. I mean, yeah, I grew up in like an evangelical Christian, kind of like a larger church setting. So in the States. So yeah, that would be beliefs like believing that Jesus literally rose from the dead, and that all this that we kind of look around and see is created by God.
What's the difference between that and Catholic?
Catholics believe, it's a good question. I won't get too deep into the weeds, but the Catholics essentially think that the way that you really like commune with God, like the kind of the center point of your connection to God, is through communion. It's through a thing called the Eucharist, and that's like the bread and the wine. And so there's a ritual, it's a spiritual ritual where you kind of go and you eat the bread, drink the wine, and in doing so, you're like literally connecting to God. Like they believe that through a ritual that the priest does, that bread and wine become the literal blood and body of Jesus. And so you consume that. And that's why like the Romans thought it was like a cannibalistic cult back in the day. There's like old like historical folklore around like the Catholics being misunderstood as cannibals because their whole like religion centered around consuming the blood and body of Jesus, which, you know, I mean, on first glance, that does look a little strange, but when you read into it, it's like, it's cool. It's like, God essentially wanted to be connected to us. I mean, he did that through, becoming human, and that there's this weird bridge between the divine and humanity in Jesus. And so we remember that each week through that ritual. So that's cool. That's not what I think, but I think that's sweet. I don't think that's like anything ultimately terrible to believe. Like I think that you still go to the good place even if you think that. But I as a Protestant would hold that the connection is experiential. So that's through something like your prayer life or something like the actual experience of the Holy Spirit being indwelled by God. That your connection is a bit more direct than just through like bread and wine. That I can pray and connect to God right now, and Catholics think that too. But like the epitome of the connection is in that personal relationship that you have with Jesus, and then also you kind of learn about who God is through the Bible and His Word, and then also through connecting to the church and getting to meet other people who are Christians. Still take communion, but don't believe that it's like the literal blood and body thing. Just it's more of a symbol. And then we go through the baptism, like just you said, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the center of it is like God wants relationship with humanity. And I can experience that relationship directly. It's not just an idea. It's not just something like I technically believe, like I believe in a political party or something. It's something I directly experience. And that's a very evangelical thought. Like the evangelicals kind of put all their chips on that piece of it, the personal relationship piece. And other types of Christians kind of all like put something different at the center. So Catholics, the Eucharist, evangelicals, the personal relationship. I don't know what it is for the Orthodox and some other folks. I'm sure they could talk about it, but that's
my question for you is,
that's the rough part.
What What's at the top? Is it the belief or is it the community that it brings that really hits home with you?
Expand on your question. What do you mean?
Is it about what's talked about in church, or is it about being in church with other people and connecting with other people?
That's a
Because I
good question.
feel like that's huge. Church is a community. It's a sense of home for a lot of people, and it brings a lot of people together. It keeps towns and cities up when things are going sideways.
Yeah, I think you could say, is eating a meal about the nourishment that you get for your body, or is it about the people you share the meal with? And so the answer is kind of like, well, both. And
Gotta eat.
and it's a lot more fun to do with people. You enjoy it, and it's more meaningful with people. But yeah, there's also a sustenance aspect to where it's like a deep need beyond just what you share with other people. So both. Yeah. I think of it like so much of what I believe and do in the world is informed by that religious faith. And so whether I'm doing stuff with people or not, like it's kind of undergirding and supporting me, in all sorts of different ways.
Were your parents religious?
Yeah. Yeah, my folks were religious. They grew up actually being like missionaries, and they did this thing called YWAM, which is like, it's funny because it's like this thing that like if you grew up in like really conservative like 80s Christian culture, and you wanted to like travel after high school and you wanted to go like see the world, you could do YWAM, which was like you would go and be missionaries in like Europe or something, but you could have your whole church pay for it. And it was kind of like half vacation, half missionary work. I mean, not to like denigrate YWAM. If anyone's listening and offended by that, like, sorry, YWAMers. But it seemed to me more like, I don't know what to do for school. I'm going to go, do some like altruistic things. Like you would go and you would like serve meals, or you would go like on a building project, or you would kind of go serve kind of like Peace Corps or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was less serious than what I see like Mormon or LDS folks doing. Like an LDS mission seems like you're not there for a vacation. You're there to like do work. And,
What's LDS?
Mormon, like Latter-day Saints.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, folks who are Latter-day Saints, like all Latter-day Saint folk, they do their mission, or at least the men do, that they do mission, and that's not kind of like a half glorified vacation, half altruistic Peace Corps stuff. But the YWAMers, that was more like
the YWAMers.
Come on, Youth with a Mission was what it stood for. So yeah, they would.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to figure it out in my head.
Yeah, sorry, Youth with a Mission. So yeah, you go travel. So my folks did that. My dad was in a band, and he traveled around, and they do music stuff in camps and stuff like that. And then my mom did that as well. And so they actually met in like middle school, high school. So they were like high school sweethearts, and then went off and did that together. Wow. But yeah, church was really a big part of my family's life. So we grew up going to church a lot, and that was always a big part of growing up.
Okay, kind of going back to like the question about say the second chance. Do you think if your family wasn't religious, do you think that you'd gravitate towards it still?
I don't know. I guess we'll never know. That's a good question though. Or if I like grew up, I don't know, like in a Muslim country, would I just be Muslim or something like that? It's a good thought experiment, but I guess we'll never really know. What I do know is like, I know lots of people who grew up in my kind of world who ultimately did not become Christians or stay Christians. Like they kind of grew up, kind of like you, like grew up like, I went to Catholic school, like my family was kind of religious and kind of went off and did my own thing without it. And so I often find that I'm like the only Christian in most of my circles. So like as a therapist, for example,
Really?
I can count on one hand the Christians that I know who are therapists. And then in my world, like when it comes to like trauma therapy and going to conferences and like teaching and kind of at higher levels of like academia, I'm the only Christian there. I'm often the only Christian that some of those people ever meet. And
Why
it's
is
often,
that?
well, they just think it's weird. They're like, well, if you knew all this stuff about psychology and like how the brain works, and you probably wouldn't be religious. Like they kind of assume that you would grow out of it once you kind of learn more. And then so it's a bit strange to them that they're like, oh, you seem like a sharp guy. Why are you religious? And then I tell them like,
What's your answer?
Well, it's kind of a long answer, but I won't make it too long. It's 4 reasons. I'll just brush over them. The first reason would be like, I just think there's a reason there's something rather than nothing. Like it feels a bit unreasonable to think that all this just always existed and there was always just stuff. Like, where did it come from? I think is like the ultimate philosophical question. And everything around us has a cause. Like that pillow behind me didn't just, manifest in thin air. Like it was made somewhere. And then the fibers that it was made out of grew out of the ground. And then the material that, was that plant came from the rain and the dirt. And like everything comes from something. We don't have an example of anything in the world that doesn't come from something. And so then the question is like, what's the first cause? The Big Bang, like what happened? And I don't think, folks who don't believe in a God have a really good answer to that. It's like, oh, well, some microbes, crystals. I'm like, where'd the microbes come from? And so I think that it makes sense that there was a first cause. There would have to be something that is not bound by time or space or material that caused a time-bound material spacious, existence. And there's a big philosophical reason for that. But that's the first point. Second point is like everything seems pretty fine-tuned. Like when you look around, I don't know, when I study the brain, it works together really well. It's like the most complicated, vast, crazy computer system you've ever seen. Like, like there'll be people with brain injuries. Like there's classic examples of people with intense brain injuries. So whole brain regions will like shut down and stop working because of like a really bad smack to the head in a car accident or something. And then a different part of the brain will start taking over and manifesting the ability to speak and do math and stuff. But that brain region isn't supposed to do that. So like, it's such a dynamic and complex thing that we have in our skulls that's more complicated than anything humans have ever been able to make. It's just wild. The more that I learn about it, the more impressed, the more I'm like, man, the fact that this would just come about by chance seems so weird to me. And then you start looking at like quantum physics and like the idea that if we were just a little bit closer to the sun, our planet, just a little bit closer or a little bit further away, there'd be no life on Earth. Like the temperature wouldn't sustain life. Or just a little bit more salt in the ocean, or a little bit less salt, a little bit more nitrogen in the air, a little bit less nitrogen. Like you really start to look at all the vast, crazy things that had to happen for this all to be here. It's just like, holy crap. Like there has to be a reason. And so I think that implies a mind, not just a amorphous spiritual blob of a force, like the great beyond force of creative energy, spiritual, transcendent, whatever. Like it's too intentional for that. It's too specific. Like everything seems like it was put together on purpose. And I just think that begs that there's something more. And then third reason is there's like moral absolutes. There's like when someone kills a child, that's wrong. And it's not just wrong because we all socially think it's wrong. Like a lot of people will be like, oh, well, like morals or what's right and wrong, like that's all just kind of social, this or that. Like we all just kind of agree. That's just social cognition. But I don't believe that. I don't think really any of us really believe that when we start thinking about it. Like if the Nazis took over, for example, I mean, would it then be morally right that all the mentally handicapped and gay people and Jews should die? That they're less than human? Do we all think that? Do we all think, yeah, that would be morally good to gas all of those people? No. Like all of us know. And that's not just because, well, the Nazis didn't win, so that means it's morally wrong that they did that. Like that's just such a shallow way to think morally. I think we all have a deep intuition that was wrong. Even if the Nazis won, we'd all know it's wrong. And that can be distorted and messed up, but I think we all have that internal compass. Again, with variance, like it's not all 100% the same, but that we all kind of know that taking advantage and, I can name a bunch of big, terrible, awful things, but we all have a gut instinct that it's not good. And beyond just because we all socially agree that it is, or that it's advantageous for us to act that way. So then I'm like, where'd that come from? And I think the most reasonable and the best answer for that is that there was a moral lawgiver, that there's a transcendent force, this thing that fine-tuned the world, this thing that caused everything, has a will, that conscious sentient beings act a certain way in accordance with what is good, not just with what is advantageous, but what is good. And I think that makes sense, that it's grounded in something beyond, that even if the majority think that it should be one way, that doesn't mean it should be, or that means it's morally right, that the underdog can be right, morally. So that's the third. And then the fourth is like, I just think Jesus literally rose from the dead when I look at the historical accounts of that guy that we all count back from. Like, we all measure time based off of that guy's existence. We're all counting backwards, like 2024, 2023, from when he lived. Like, there's something that happened there. And the short list of why I think that is, I'm like, all the disciples that followed him claimed to see him after he rose from the dead, and there was 500 other people who claimed to have saw him. And so when they went around from town to town and they were like, hey, Jesus is the Messiah, he's the Son of God, he rose from the dead. In the accounts, when you read the book of Acts, for example, they're saying, Jesus, whom you saw, like, essentially, who was on the beach making fish the other day. like we all saw him. He was the Son of God. Like, he rose from the dead. And that's just such a weird thing. It should have never taken off. If that was a lie, if that wasn't true, everyone would just be like, no, you're crazy, guys. Like, go look at the grave. Like, we can just go look in the grave. There's his body right there. But no, people started believing in by the thousands. Yeah. And it makes no sense why people would believe something that crazy. And there's a bunch of reasons for why that. Like, the Jews wouldn't have come up with something like that. Like, they didn't believe that the Messiah was going to be some human person that would rise from the dead. That wasn't in their expectations at all. You know, the idea that all those disciples went to their death, you know, claiming that Jesus rose from the dead. Like, they didn't get rich. They didn't have like a big harem. It wasn't like there was a lot of benefit to saying that. They all like lost their families and got chastised by everyone. Everyone they knew and loved thought they were nuts, and then threw them in prison. They got flogged and beaten and killed. Like, who does something like that if they don't believe that it's actually true? And then the last reason is that I've had like a personal encounter with Jesus. I really believe in Jesus because of my experience with him. And it's been so personally meaningful to me, like just in my own private prayers with him, that it's changed my life. And so those are the reasons.
Those are great reasons.
Started going to TED Talk, but that's it.
No, that's perfect. I feel like a lot of people are scared to talk about religion.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't know. I think it's just nice to hear. It's nice to listen. And it's okay if you don't necessarily believe everything that somebody else is saying. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners listening to this that are like, okay, sure. That's great that you believe that. I believe this way. And then that's okay too. You know, and I think that's super important.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Now, for your kids, are you going to be hardcore? Are you going to be like, yo, we're going to church?
We're going to church. Yeah. I'm going to raise my kids religious. Yeah. And I think that, you know, when you look at folks who kind of grow up and like their parents were super religious and they have like a really bad experience of that, like they kind of like, oh, I kind of hated that religion was pushed on me. It's usually because the parents themselves were a bit hypocritical. Like, they kind of used religion to like do things that were less than great. Let's just say that. Like, maybe it was just to get you to listen to me or to do this or to do that, or
a lot of people use church as a punishment too, they're like, okay, we're going to church. You're sitting here for this long and listening to the service. And then, or if you want to do this, you have to come to church with me. You know, it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess if I have to.
Especially if it's like a really scary thing, like do this or you're going to go to hell or something. Like, people have a lot of bad experiences with that. But folks who grow up religious and then they report like they really loved that, they thought it was really meaningful, typically have really safe relationships with their parents. Like, they feel like their parents really love them. They're safe. They're good. Like, there's a congruence between the religion and who they were as people. And it wasn't like all bound up in fear. It wasn't like you have to do this or else. It was like, let me show you what's so beautiful and great about this. And let me introduce you to something that adds a lot of value to my life. And there's an open-handedness with it. And so I think that's how I plan to raise my kids, is to really introduce them to what aspects of that I really find meaningful. And of course, if they make decisions down the road that they don't want to do that, or that's not as important to them, I wouldn't like, you know, disown them or something like terrible, or like, you know, it would be, love and acceptance. But yeah, I think that ultimately, believing in Jesus has eternal ramifications. I think that that's in part, like, no, not in part, it's in full the thing that ultimately determines what happens after you die. And so of course, any parent that really believes that would want their kids to believe that too, you know, because I think that isn't just the most beneficial life that you have to live here. It's also, you know, consciousness goes on forever. That's what I believe. And that happens either with Christ or without him. And so that would be my hope for him. But presenting that in a loving way, not in a scary way, I think is a really important part of that.
Yeah, and positive, not negative. I feel like that's key.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still go to church, and I go with my mom. And I think I just wasn't educated as a kid about it. Like I said, like it was more of a chore than anything. And I was just like a sports kid. Like I just wanted to like get out and go play sports and play with my friends. Mm-hmm. And being elsewhere. And that wasn't just with church. That was with everything. That was with doctor's appointments. That was with school. That was at all of the above. Anything that I had to go do that wasn't what I loved doing, I was like, okay, I'll sit here.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and that's just kind of, I was a kid. And the other thing, I wasn't a very smart kid. I felt like I had street smarts, but I wasn't a kid that remembered every textbook. I wasn't a kid that remembered what every single word meant. And so when I was sitting in church, I'd hear words and I'd be like, what the hell? Well, I don't even know what that means. Mm-hmm. And then immediately I was like disconnected.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't feel kind of taught. That's just not how necessarily like I learned. I was an ADHD kid. Like I was like, okay, you got to show me. I gotta do it. I gotta practice it, you know? And that's just not something that I was really introduced as a kid.
That makes sense. Catholicism, there's a lot of insider language too. You know, like there are a lot of big words and a lot of steps and
it's a big book.
It's a big book, man. It's complicated. Hey.
It's like Harry Potter next level big book.
Yeah, it's a lot. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And it makes sense that it was just kind of a lot and you were just a kid that wanted to play sports and do your thing and kind of being forced to sit in class all day. It was a lot.
It wasn't that I was like, no, I don't want to believe in this. It was kind of like going in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
And I grew up and when I was on tour, I had a lot of friends in Texas that were influencers and they were just super religious. Mm-hmm. And I was uneducated. I just had no idea. I didn't know anything of what it was about or anything. But I was also really amazed to just like, even just to see them say, or hear them at the dinner table say grace. I was like, I can feel love. Like it's so much more than just words to this family. This is what connects this family. And I was like, that's beautiful. And that's for every religion. I just look at it, I'm like, that's what it is, right? That's why I asked, is it the belief or the community? And I think the answer is both. Mm-hmm. It's the belief brings the community, and I think that's super impactful.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said something earlier too. You're like, oh, I don't really even know what like it would bring to my life. Like right now, I'm kind of just focused on like right now. I know a lot of people of like lots of different religions that have really good lives right now, and I think that was kind of something surprising even to like different psychologists that I talk to. Like then when they find out I'm a Christian, they're like, well, why? Like, do you really need that? Like,
yeah.
And yeah, I've always, that's why I'm like, oh, well, that's not necessarily the point. Like people can be happy without religion. People can be good people, you know, without religion. Like they can be decent, you know, to one another. It's not like you're like a raving murderer unless you're religious or something. The real like benefit, I think, of Christianity in particular was always just that relationship with God. It's that idea that I can actually have a connection to God. I don't have to know all these vocab words. I don't have to have everything right and all the best stuff. It's like I just want to be known and know Him, and that I think is a unique experience that really does enrich not just like the daily life or the pragmatic like needs of your day, but qualitatively feels like something different. And a lot of people claim to have that experience of different religions too. So I also I get that. Yeah. It's weird. It's weird. Like, I think I'm so used to people being pretty guarded around like religious stuff. I think as a kid, like I was really enthusiastic about it. Like I got a lot of enjoyment and excitement around telling people about what I believed about God and stuff. But then people kind of felt like I was pushing stuff on them or trying to sell them on like a religion. And then I got kind of bashful and nervous about it just because I had so many people kind of blow up on me. And so now I even kind of catch myself feeling just a bit timid to really talk about what I think about that stuff because people ultimately think like you're trying to persuade them stuff and you're trying to like tell them how they should live their lives. But I kind of am swinging back around like on that pendulum of feeling like, well, I feel like I can talk about this stuff in certain settings. Like I don't talk about that stuff on my main page, like on my Instagram or TikTok. Like I don't talk about religion there. I'm not necessarily a guy who's going to try to like insert it into a conversation where it hasn't really been brought up. But when it is brought up in like an episode like this, not feeling weird to just, no, this is what I think. This is what I think about it. And I think people hold a lot of baggage around religion. I think people grew up with a lot of religion shoved down their throats. And then people in the name of religion doing a lot of bad things. And that, of course, is trauma that's valid and real. And so it's hard sometimes to kind of have that projected on you, or know what to do when someone has that wounding and how to navigate that well. It's tricky.
I get a lot of comments on TikToks if I'm talking about advice on anything. They would be like, "Don't listen to this guy. Let God solve it." And I never have an answer. I never have an answer to those comments because I'm like,
here's my answer. You want to know my answer?
Yeah. Help me out here.
If God gave you a watch, is it more faithful?
I'm not wearing my watch.
I am. I have a watch on.
Okay.
If God gave you a watch, is it more faithful to ask God what time it is or to look at your watch?
Look at the watch, man.
Exactly. So when someone's like, "Oh, I'm really hurting from a breakup. What do I do?" And then it's like, "Well, just ask God, trust God." Or, I don't know, you have a watch. Like, press into some of the relationships that you have around you. Go to therapy. Process what that means to you. Take care of yourself. Go on a run. Like, you have a watch in front of you, and I think that you can, of course, have faith and trust God in all sorts of ways. But sometimes how you trust is by acting on what God's given you to take care of yourself.
Yeah, I think there needs to be that action versus just the belief as well.
I mean, I think about that with my kid. Like, I have a 2-year-old daughter. And so if my 2-year-old daughter's hungry, she's like, "Can I have a snack?" She can come to me and ask for a snack. That's good and fine. But if she was 16 and then she was like, "Dad, can I have a snack?" It's like, girl, go get a snack. Like, do your thing. Like, go in the fridge. You know how to make eggs? Like, whatever you want to do. Like, there's kind of this, it wouldn't be because she loves me more or trusts me more as her dad that she went and asked me to make her scrambled eggs. You know, it would almost be a little bit strange. It's like, if I've done my job right as your dad, you are going to be equipped to go get yourself a snack when it's developmentally appropriate. You know, so that's how I think about that. When people are like, "Oh, don't listen to this, just trust God." I'm like, man, if you're saying that, you're treating someone like a spiritual infant. And and maybe in some cases, it makes sense to let go and just trust God. But in a lot of cases, if you have a watch, take a look. That's my answer to that.
I like that. You know what I'm going to reply now? I'm just going to say, look at your watch. They'll have no idea what I'm talking about. Look at your watch.
Yeah, except the real, I don't know, the real winners who listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think with your kids, like, will you do church at all, or do you think you'll just kind of let them make their own decisions around stuff?
I don't know. I find there's a lot going around with, I don't want to make this episode just about kids, but there's a lot going around with kids and like what to do, what not to do, you know, when it comes to gender and norms and all of that. There's a lot of boundaries that are kind of set virtually from just like people online. And I think we let it affect ourselves a lot. I think I would let I don't want to say let the kid choose, because they're not going to be able to choose. Whatever feels most natural. Like I said, I think for me, it's really about community. And I think if like I want to go meet people and make new friends, I'd probably go to a church or some form of some church feeling. And I think that is impactful. I mean, I went to a Catholic school. That's something that was comfortable for me. I don't think it was negative. That might be something. I guess the right word is agnostic. That's the right word, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Where it's not like you're saying there's no God, I know for sure, but you're like, oh, I'm just taking it as I go.
Yeah. That's kind of the life that for myself right now that I have to live. And I know there's a lot of my friends are influencers, and we've parted ways, but they could go down a really bad rabbit hole. It could be with drugs or alcohol or just a really bad spot. And then they do a complete 180 with their lives and they become very religious. And that's just something, I'll be honest with you. Before I was like, okay, that is weird. This doesn't make sense to me. Like, you need to fix yourself. Like, what's going on? But then now that I've gotten older, I'm like, I'm just happy for them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so happy that I don't care how you did it, but it's working for you. And that's amazing to me. I'm like, I'm happy you're here. However you needed to do that, and it being with God, like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's what I like about religion. Not being religious, which
Sure.
I think that's really cool to like acknowledge and try to understand and believe in beliefs and just be happy for people. That's kind of where I sit.
Yeah. I think it's something that people reach out to when they're in pain. It's very common. I think when you're in pain and you're overwhelmed, it's like you realize, like, okay, I don't have what I need in front of me to change this, to get out of this. Like, if I could have changed things, I would have done it by now. It's kind of the idea. And I think there's a lot of ways to like pull yourself out of hardship. Like, I'm a therapist, obviously, so I think that you don't have to have religion to pull yourself out of hardship. It's healing your trauma. It's, finding different ways to regulate and to different resources to be able to kind of fill your life with what's meaningful to you. I mean, that's a lot of the message that I talk about just on my public platforms and most of what I do. But there's another angle to it where I'm like, what I think runs even deeper than all that is literally having contact with who created you, and then hearing their blueprint for your life, how they designed you to flourish, and then trusting that force to actually guide your life and to show you who you are, is, I think, an even deeper transformational experience that goes beyond just like, okay, now I can finally quit alcohol, or I can finally, I don't know, feel less insecure, whatever. Like, Christians still struggle with stuff and still need therapy, and still, I don't know, it's not like a solve all. But there's a qualitative difference to something like that I think you see. Like, it creates tons of enthusiasm. People will get religious and then it like takes over everything, and they can't like say two sentences without, going on a big rant about it. It's kind of, it's like if CrossFit and all those other things combined, like, and it can feel like a lot, like it's a bit much, but but that's because I think people are just having such a radical experience that they don't know how to be normal about it. They don't know how to say it normally. So I get it. I don't know.
I find with me, I have a hard time slowing down my life. I have a hard time reading. I have a hard time prioritizing certain parts of my health because I'm like, oh no, that's going to take. Perfect example, flossing. In my head, flossing takes an hour because I associate it with going to the dentist. I'm at a dentist for an hour. In order to get clean teeth, I need to do it for this amount of time. It's negative to me. Now, I floss now, okay? And because I realized this could be a minute out of my day. A minute. Maybe two. Depends. I got those. Yeah. I got the bars from braces. Do you have those? Have you ever had braces?
No, I had braces. I might need to get braces again.
Oh, because you didn't get the bars.
I didn't get the bars, and then my gap in my molars, they're not touching. So when I bite down, my teeth don't touch in the back. And all my dentists are telling me that's going to create problems if I don't have that fixed. So they're like, you need to get braces. And I'm like, I don't think you understand.
Your teeth don't touch in the back?
I have a public life, and I would feel bad about having braces. I wouldn't like how I look.
Invisalign.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I need to because the teeth don't bite in the back, I would need the actual braces because then the bands would kind of pull stuff together. I don't know. I haven't talked to an orthodontist about it. I'm too I'm too stubborn, but I should.
Well, folks listening, the next podcast, we're going to be sponsored by Invisalign.
Wow.
Just for Matthias. We're gonna get his teeth touching.
Come on. Just
That's our
pray for my
goal here.
teeth. I need everyone to pray for my teeth. Pray for Matthias's teeth gaps.
Yeah. But I do feel like that where I struggle a lot is slowing down my life and understanding that things don't take that much time, or actually things don't need to be rushed.
Yeah.
You can slow down.
Yeah.
It might have been a title of my book, but it's true. And I titled it that way because that's the number one thing I have a hard time with. I constantly feel rushed, and I'm working on slowing down.
It's good. Do you want to?
And then who knows? Who knows what'll happen? Do I want to what? Do I want to stop talking to you?
Do you want to read the phone number again? We got a phone number.
Okay.
If people
Sorry,
have
I got a
questions
little hostile.
if people have questions about Joey's new religion that he's starting, about slowing down in flossing, it's a very floss-focused religion. And if you have questions about dentistry, we're going to be doing a whole dentistry episode. I'm just joking. Don't ask questions.
No.
What's the phone number?
901-506-0900.
Yeah,
You
we're
can
doing
call
this.
us.
Yeah, go ahead.
Leave voicemail.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you can leave a voicemail. Like, if you have questions about whatever you want to like be on the episode, you could do that. We're starting that thing now, so you can call in. That'd be good and fine.
Yeah, we thought it'd be a good concept to hear from the listeners, because I feel like we are a listener podcast. I feel like that's our main thing. That's who we're making this for. And so it'd be nice to hear from the listeners, from you, and give our 2 cents. It's not necessarily that we're gonna answer everyone's life problems, but it'd be nice to just kind of talk about new things. Matthias and I are in different places in the world, and so we're still learning about each other, and I think that's very interesting to everyone else as well. And maybe you'll learn something new about yourself too.
Love it. All right. Thanks, everybody.